Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you are having a good afternoon. The Browns, what several people reported yesterday, made it official today. Tommy Rees, a young guy, named the new offensive coordinator for the Browns for the 2025 season, and moving ahead was the tight ends coach, passing game specialist. Kevin Stefanski made a statement on Tommy Rees. Tommy has an incredible football mind, extremely bright, and has been around the game his entire life. Before joining our staff, established himself as one of the top assistants in college football. And Kevin Stefanski concludes, I am looking forward to working with Tommy to reshape the Browns offense in 2025. Let's welcome in Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, last time you were on, we heard some of the really good things that Nick Saban said about him. What do you think? Why did the Browns name Tommy Rees their offensive coordinator? I know you've addressed this in the Orange and Brown Talk podcast as well.
I really think that they view him as an up-and-coming mind in the game. They were excited about what they saw in him last season as tight ends coach and passing game specialist, and he handled himself really well inside the building during a very, very challenging year. He showed his football acumen. We know that he interviewed twice for the North Carolina job that went to Bill Belichick. So if you are being mentioned in those kinds of circles, then you must be doing something right. So they saw a lot in him, and they are ready to give him a chance.
Yeah, and it's a guy that's been an offensive coordinator at Alabama as well as Notre Dame. Mike Vrabel, was rumored to want him as his new offensive coordinator in New England. So all really good things. We mentioned Nick Saban. So Tommy Rees talked about what he had learned from Nick Saban, and he would say quite a bit. It really doesn't matter what you know if your players don't know it. What good is it? So it's something that's stuck with Tommy Rees. You can be the smartest guy in the room, great X's and O's, but if you're not a great teacher and it doesn't translate to your players, what good is it really? So kind of some coaching philosophy, and it kind of flows with what we've heard from Kevin Stefanski and his staff. He's looking for guys that can teach the game.
Yes, he really is that kind of a coach, and he played quarterback at Notre Dame, so he understands the position, and that's vitally important as the Browns move into a new quarterback era. They're moving away from Deshaun Watson and into a whole new quarterback room. They're probably going to have a rookie that might even start this year. They'll have another veteran or two in the room. So Tommy's going to be part of helping to not only restock that room, but coach up that room in a very hands-on kind of way. And he is a quarterback's coach. And he is a former quarterback. So he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's looking at. And I think this is really going to help them.
And it's kind of interesting. We kind of connected the dots yesterday. I'm curious as to your thought. He's got it, was the offensive coordinator for Jalen Milroe from Alabama for an entire season when Milroe was really good. I'm not saying the Browns are going to draft him, but they're going to know more than most people know about Milroe because of Tommy Rees.
Yes, that is a great way to do your diligence on Jalen Milroe, is to have his former 2023 offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach in the house. And that's exactly what Tommy Rees was. That's what he spent his 2023 season doing. And who knows? I mean, the Browns might want to draft Jalen Milroe from Alabama. We don't know. We don't know whom they have ranked 1 to 5 amongst the quarterbacks in this draft class. Everybody's saying Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders first and second, but we don't know how the Browns have them ranked. And certainly with Jalen Milroe, if you have a Tommy Rees in the house, you will know everything that you need to know about him. And if they do draft him, there probably isn't anyone better to coach him up.
Yeah, without question. And I would say, remember what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson. They traded back into the last slot in the first round, so they got their fifth-year option. If the Browns view him as a second-round grade, that's the way you get that extra year of a rookie quarterback deal. And usually the teams that have been in the Super Bowl that are drafting those last couple, they're not locked into to those last picks in the first round.
No, the only thing is, if you really, really have your heart set on a quarterback, you don't want to get too risky with it. You don't want to wait too long to take him, because quarterbacks go at a premium and you kind of bump them up over a lot of other positions, and you kind of throw the national rankings out the window when you need a quarterback, and you might take one a lot higher than he's supposed to go, just because it doesn't really matter where you take him. It matters where he takes your football team. And so, that's the whole key here is if you think you can win with a quarterback, you'll be willing to take a chance on him.
Without question. All right, so Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, on the idea that the Browns might look at trying to get some of that guaranteed money back from Deshaun Watson's contract. This from 92.3 The Fan's Afternoon Drive.
If he retore it because he was doing something dumb, that's something else, right? But, let's say he was at a rehab facility in Miami, and that's how it happened, right? Then you go and you void his guarantees and you go after his money. Other players are going to see that. How are other players going to look at that? You know what I mean? And if you're another player and you see that, you're making a lot less money than Deshaun, and you see that they did that, you're like, geez. Okay, well, when I'm away from the facility now, if I get hurt, and when I'm away from the facility now, I'm not going to rehab that hard because I got to be careful about it. You know what I mean? So, I just think that can be a tough precedent for a team to set. I think it's something you have to kind of bear in mind if you're moving forward here. Again, if he retore it and they can prove it, stepping off a boat, then yeah, go nuts. You know what I mean? And I'm just using the boat analogy because it's Miami, because he was in Miami and everything else and whatever, right?
Yeah.
But if it happened while he was rehabbing, I do think that that's different.
And Mary Kay, that kind of leads us to a couple of your an article you wrote, actually. The Browns trying to recoup some of that money, and was the Deshaun Watson trade Jimmy Haslam's doing. I think it's a valid point. Football is a people business, and you have to treat people the way you want to be treated with these things.
Yes, and here's the key. I've seen some sort of what I would call irresponsible reporting on this situation. In fact, someone reported that, the Browns are going to go after that money because he was doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing. And then using a video of Deshaun and his girlfriend, Jilly, whatever, on the side of the road, wherever they were, maybe dancing a little bit, dancing a little bit and not moving your legs hardly at all does not constitute an activity that is prohibited in your contract. Those things are very spelled out. So to put that out there and give people the impression that the Browns could go after his money based on what anybody saw in that video, in my opinion, that's completely irresponsible. I had so many people, texting me, calling me and saying, hey, what about this? Should we be looking? I'm like, no, we shouldn't be looking into that. Look what he's doing in the video. Does that look like skydiving or jet skiing or all of these other very high risk, dangerous activities that are prohibited? So I think we have to be very, very careful about what we're putting our stock and faith into when we're going through this process. And I think as reporters, we have to be very, very factual and give people the truth about what they need to know. So that was my little sermon on that. But the Browns, of course, they won't be able to go after that money unless he really was doing something prohibited by terms of the contract. So we'll have to see how that goes. But it's, everybody's very mum about how he actually did this. And I'm sure some of that is because for insurance purposes, for legal purposes, nobody really knows what's coming down the pike with all of this. But certainly a little dance isn't going to do it. It would have had to have been something really prohibited, dangerous, something that you should absolutely not be doing the first day or week or whatever when you get that boot off. As far as having the boot off, I'm sure he wouldn't have come out of the boot unless his surgeon or his physical therapist told him that it was okay. He was in Florida rehabbing with the blessing of the Cleveland Browns. So people need to understand he wasn't just down in Miami without the Browns knowing about it. It was nothing like that. It was kind of like it was the previous year when he was rehabbing in Los Angeles, with the Browns being cooperative and a part of that. So just a lot of misinformation going on out there.
So another one of your Hey Mary Kays, and this one's, I'm curious. One could argue at no point in the season did the Browns have a quarterback in the room that was truly ready to provide decent turnover-free QB1 play. What does that say about their ability to evaluate quarterback talent? Should we be worried heading into the draft?
Well, I don't think so. First of all, this regime, we've never seen them draft a quarterback high. The only thing that we've seen them do is go out and acquire Deshaun Watson, of course, for 3 first-round picks. But they certainly weren't the only team in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. There were 4 teams vying for his services. So it's not like the Browns went out and did something crazy that nobody else would think about doing. They had to come through with that $230 million fully guaranteed contract in order to win that sweepstakes. And by the way, that was Jimmy Haslam who signed off on the money, who came up with the full guarantee and the money. It was Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski that were all in on trading for Deshaun. So this was not a Jimmy Haslam idea. This was not Jimmy driving the bus. It was an organizational decision, and Kevin and Andrew were all in on it and excited about it. It was Jimmy who came through with the money to make it actually happen. So I think we also need to set the record straight on that.
All right, before we go to break, HBO Hard Knocks. Myles Garrett talking about his future with the Browns, as well as how far the Browns are away from being back where they want to be, the playoffs.
Why is it so important for you to remain with the Cleveland Browns as opposed to maybe having an opportunity to join an absolute Super Bowl contender?
Well, for me, first of all, I want to win. And I want the Browns to be able to put me and us in position to win. And I'm not trying to rebuild. I'm trying to win right now.
Obviously, he's a huge part of our organization. We envision him going from Cleveland to Canton, by the end of his career.
I want to be a Cleveland Brown. I want to play here, play my career here, but I want to play meaningful games.
We share in this frustration. I didn't get the job done, this year, quite plainly.
I've talked to AB, how we're going to make the most out of all the talent that is here. We're closer than, some may think we are.
So, Mary Kay, they always do a really nice job with Hard Knocks. It kind of puts to rest people thinking that Myles doesn't want to be there. It sounds like they've had some sort of conversation. He's happy. Andrew Berry said that, he's going to be Browns to Canton, which means they're going to get an extension done, and it'll probably lessen the cap number, knowing the way they structure contracts around here.
Yes, I'm sure they will do something like that where they'll give him maybe another year or 2 on the contract, some more upfront money, some bonus money, sweeten the pot a little bit and make him feel a little bit better about his average, which, the Browns keep saying he's the best defensive end in the NFL. Well, if they're going to say that, they might have to put their money where their mouth is and pay him like that, because now he's fallen pretty far behind a guy like Nick Bosa, who averages $34 million a year. Myles is at 25, which I think is 5th right now. So he's going to want to be paid a little bit more like the top defensive end in the NFL. But certainly it seems like the future is pretty bright for him wanting to be here.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, hi. I heard you today commenting that Deion Sanders back in 2018 said that he would not allow his son to come here to Cleveland. Do you actually blame him? In 2018, we had Hugh Jackson. Who would want to come here under that coach? I've been a Cleveland Brown since 1986, but I've also been an Oklahoma Sooner fan since 1985, and even I didn't want Baker to come here because I knew what was going to happen. This job, it's still not attractive. Stefanski is not an attractive coach. He doesn't develop players. What has he done with DTR? Nothing. Watson is out. That was under Stefanski's watch. The only thing we have to say about Stefanski is 2-time head coach of the year. That's no excuse anymore. Thank you.
DTR was a 5th-round pick, so the number of 5th-round picks that play quarterback in the NFL isn't great. Mary Kay, again, I don't blame Deion. I don't support Deion. I think it's a red flag. I think if he came out and said that, he would pull an Eli Manning, is what he said, forcing his way out of a certain organization. You got to make sure that's not going to happen if you plan on drafting Shedeur Sanders. You just have to.
Well, that was back in 2018, right?
Yep.
When he said that. So it's a completely different regime now. So I really don't think that it's an apples to apples comparison. And I'm sure that if Andrew Berry sat down with Deion Sanders, and if Kevin Stefanski sat down with Deion Sanders, and if Tommy Rees sat down with Deion Sanders, he would have a comfort level with putting Shedeur here. It's actually not a bad place for a quarterback to land when you consider all the parts and pieces around him. If you can show him, hey, we are going to block him with this great offensive line and these all pros on the line, and we're going to give him David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy and add to that pile, and then he's got a good defense and we're going to add a running back. I mean, it really wouldn't be a bad landing place at all for a young quarterback.
So when you look at number 2, do you think, and again, I know it's so early in the process, what do you think the Browns' thought process is with the 2nd pick? Do they take a quarterback? Do they trade back? And, you know, I know one of your Hey Mary Kays, which, again, I'm curious with, you know, this idea that Kevin Stefanski is going to handpick the quarterback, I think he has input, but that just isn't the way this organization operates with Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry.
No, I mean, Kevin is just now jumping into the scouting of these quarterbacks. And I do think, as I mentioned before, that it's really going to help to have Tommy Rees's eyes on these quarterbacks because he's very fresh out of the college ranks. So he knows these guys. He knows the college game. He knows what's trickling up into the NFL and how it translates. He's also played at a very high level in college. He was a starting quarterback for Notre Dame and won 23 games there and actually was signed by the Commanders as an undrafted free agent. So he knows the position and he will get his eyes on it. But you have to be careful in letting a coach who hasn't been part of the scouting process throughout the whole entire fall or for a couple of years actually make these decisions. So it will be an organizational decision. Kevin will have input. Tommy Rees will have input. Maybe the new quarterbacks coach, if they hire one, will have input. But it definitely will be an organizational thing.
So you mentioned Tommy Rees, and this is kind of interesting as well. His teams, when he's been the OC, have been able to run the ball. You know, we think of motion and some of the high flying offense, but Notre Dame over 200 yards rushing in 2020, 144 in 2021, 189 in 2022. In 2023 at Alabama, 172. So the offenses, and again, he's a guy that incorporates motion and those kind of things into the offense. But they've been able to run the football effectively with him as the offensive coordinator.
And that's important because they're going to get back to running the football here. You cannot do what Ken Dorsey was trying to do. That is not Cleveland Browns football. That's not even Kevin Stefanski football. That's not going to happen. They're going to run the ball. And when you look around the NFL, there's actually a renaissance in terms of the running game. It wasn't in vogue for a while, but it's coming back. And guys like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are making it come back. So they do need to be able to run the ball. And I think that they have to go out and they have to find themselves their version of one of those guys or their version of their next Nick Chubb.
When you look at the running back room, how different do you think it looks? Is it as simple as a drafted guy? Is it a drafted guy and a veteran guy? What do you think the running back mix looks like next season?
Well, Jerome Ford will be here, and he did a really nice job this year. I thought he took his game up to the next level. I don't think Deontay Foreman necessarily will be back. We'll have to see about Pierre Strong. But I do think that they will find someone or a couple running backs to pair with Jerome Ford, complement him, find that bruiser, maybe even someone that can be that workhorse back. He should be able to catch some passes out of the backfield. I think that would really help. And so it will look different than it did this year for sure. And as far as Nick is concerned, there's probably a world in which he can come back, but it would have to probably be on a backup basis where he would have an incentive-driven contract.
Do you get a feel yet do you think they take a running back reasonably high? I'm not saying first round, not even second round, but do they take him in that third, fourth round range? This is a pretty deep running back class, reportedly, on the draft.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they won't target a position in any particular order or in any particular round, but they probably do need to come out of this draft with a good running back, and you can usually find one second, third, fourth round. So I would say middle round, they should end up with one, and if they don't, then they have to find something in free agency or a trade.
All right, before we go to break, I'm curious, how difficult do you think it is for Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski to evaluate young guys like M.J. Emerson, DeJuan Jones, Greg Newsome, even Cedric Tillman? So guys that have flashed but haven't been consistent enough that, you know, this guy's going to produce at the level we need him to.
Well, it's going to be tough because they have a lot of question marks going into next season at certain positions and with certain players. JOK, as we have discussed, no one knows for sure if he's going to be able to come back from that neck injury and play in 2025. It's just the stark reality of that situation. And then you've got Cedric Tillman. He spent the last 6 games of the season on IR with concussion, so they have to see how he's going to come back from that, and they have to have contingency plans because if he gets another one and misses another half dozen games with it, that's something that you have to really build into the plan. There are a number of other guys. You've got to look at DeJuan Jones and see how he's going to be now at left tackle and hope that he can come back and really build on some of the things that he's done before and nail down that left tackle job. And then Martin Emerson, I think maybe they need to take a little pressure off of him, maybe not leave him out on an island as much. Maybe they also need to look around for another sort of starting caliber outside cornerback there a little bit. So these are some things that are question marks heading into the season.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns, including most improved player on the Browns in 2024. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So, Mary Kay, this is from one of your Hey Mary Kays. Do you think the Browns will make a change at special teams coordinator off of Bubba Ventrone? If not, how do they correct the inconsistent play on special teams?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, it seems like Bubba is going to be around because I don't think that Mike Vrabel was going to necessarily take key guys from the Browns staff. So if Bubba still wants to be here and the Browns still want him here, I think he will be here. Now, if for some reason they want to go in another direction and Mike Vrabel really would like to hire him, then that could change. So stay tuned on that. But as of right now, it seems like he will be with the Browns next year. I think they need probably some different personnel. They have to hope that Dustin Hopkins comes back strong and can come out of his slump. We saw Justin Tucker come out of his slump, so now they have to hope that the same thing can happen for Dustin Hopkins in 2025. But it was an area of weakness, and I think sometimes as the whole team goes, the special teams go as well, because you're losing guys to injuries and then you're down to some backup players in the kicking game and whatnot. So everyone knows that they need a rebound there in 2025.
All right, so this is from PFF, Pro Football Focus. Each team's most improved player 2024 for the Browns. They go with Isaiah McGuire, appeared in just 4 games as a rookie in 2023. Little fanfare, 2 sacks, 8 pressures, a grade under 50. 2024, played in 16 games and earned an 83.3 grade, 11th highest among edge rushers in those 16 games. 29 pressures, 3 sacks. He registered 3 games with a grade of at least 90. And he was a guy that, the eye test matches what the PFF grade says. Well, that's not always the case, but you watched him and you're like, yeah, he can play a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. He flashed, he showed some really good things, and he will be a key piece in 2025. And I think there were a number of guys that fit that category. We saw a lot of good things from Mike Hall as well. And you know that Alex Smith is coming back. Alex Wright is coming back. And so I think there are some things for the Browns to get excited about. I thought Cam Mitchell did a nice job. There were other guys on the defense, Ronnie Hickman. So they have things to be excited about when it comes time to restocking and retooling their defense and making sure that they get back up into the top 10.
All right, so you look at the 2024 season. Did we, as a group, as media that covers the team, did we overvalue the roster, or did the roster just underperform?
I think it really started out with the offense going into the tank. And a lot of that had to do with injuries. A lot of that had to do with Deshaun Watson struggling from rustiness or coming back from the shoulder surgery and the things that happened there. But just the whole overhauled offense was ill-fated from the start. And it was also derailed by injuries. And then when you have a lack of a running game, you know, you're going to get all those interceptions. You're going to put your defense on short fields, so their numbers are going to go down. So I think if they can, of course, they've got to get the quarterback next year. They have to get 2 more receivers, I think, a good running back, and they could get back on track next year.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to where I was going. Are they that far away from being, you know, in that contention for the wild card, the division?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look at what happened with the Washington Commanders this year. Now, you're not always going to find a Jaden Daniels every single year, but if you can find somebody that can come in and play good, clean football for you with everything that you have around him, then I think you can get back into contention. You can win games. I mean, if you can stay relevant into November, anything can happen at that point. So I do think that they can get back into contention next year.
So you just in what we had talked about, it sounds like, and I've said this for a little bit, the offense needs they need playmakers, and you probably have to get a little bit younger on the offensive line. Both of those accurate, just in the way you're thinking as well.
Yeah, maybe. I think it depends on if Joel Bitonio is coming back or not. That's a huge thing to keep an eye on. If not, I think they probably feel that Zach Zinter will be ready to step up and step in there. I do think Jack Conklin will be back. So if you've got Jack, Wyatt, Ethan, and Joel comes back, I think you're in great shape. And then you just kind of have to hope that DeWand is what you want. And as I mentioned before, that's a pretty good offensive line for a young quarterback to step into and get blocked by. So it just really will help, you know, in terms of them getting older. Again, it depends on if they decide to go in a different direction with Jack, which I don't think they should. I think they should pay him whatever he should get paid next year and try to talk Joel into coming back.
So wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy had a great year. I mean, All-Pro, Pro Bowl, whatever. A lot of his production came from Jameis Winston. Does that concern you at all? Because Winston's a guy, he's going to give him the opportunity to make plays. But it was, I think, the 5th most receiving yards in Cleveland Browns history. So it was that good.
It was that good, and you're going to have to hope that that they can duplicate that or somehow match that with their new quarterback. But once again, when you have a running game to support it, and maybe when you have some other guys that can take a little attention away from Jerry, and you've got someone that can come in and not turn the ball over and possess the football, then there should be plenty enough for all the dogs to eat.
Would you go draft with receivers? And again, the Browns under Andrew Berry haven't gone higher than 3rd round. But in fairness, they haven't had first-round picks the last 3 years. Would you draft a receiver high? And again, hypothetically, is it that important to get a playmaking type wide receiver?
Yes, it is. I would add 2 more. One more of a Pro Bowl caliber, and then somebody just maybe right behind that, because I think with Ced Tillman, you have to hedge your bets a little bit and hope that he's going to be able to stay out there and stay nice and healthy for you. So I would be finding at least one more Pro Bowl caliber, and then someone that can come in and get 700 yards for you and 5 touchdown catches. And then they have to hope that David Njoku comes back strong, because this was not a David Njoku type of year. He should have at least had 8, 9 touchdown catches, but he was injured much of the season. So that didn't go the way anybody really hoped either. So if you can bring him back healthy and then add 2 more really good weapons on that offense, I think they'll be in good shape.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter with Plain Dealer, cleveland.com as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Always great Browns coverage in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick time out. Sam Monson from the 33rd Team. Check the Mic podcast straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. This might not be a big deal, but when watching elite quarterbacks in the NFL, it's amazing how Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and even Joe Burrow are magicians at moving skillfully around the pocket while avoiding a pass rush, along with the other qualities that make them great. 3 of those guys tested our D-line and made us pay due to not enough pressure. What QBs in this draft have this escapability trait based on what you've seen from them in college thus far? Pro game is so darn fast. Not sure the consensus top 2 guys have this in their makeup. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Sam Monson from the 33rd Team. He is also co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Sam, we're still real early in quarterback evaluation process. Senior Bowl will be in a couple weeks, so you'll get some of that. Are there any that you know that are that talented at moving around in the pocket? That's what made Tom Brady so elite as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's sort of 2 elements to this. There's the trend, I think, in the last few years of mobility and ability to create off schedule, off platform, outside of the structure of the offense. That's almost becoming a necessary tool, whereas previously it was kind of a bonus if a quarterback could do that. Now you almost need that as a baseline. Or if you don't have that, you had better be Tom Brady. You had better be so good from a mental processing standpoint that you can still survive as strictly a statue within the pocket. And there really aren't many of those guys still in existence. And then you got the other element, the sort of the careful difference that you just articulated between, Tom Brady had exceptional pocket presence and pocket movement, but was no kind of athlete, and the same thing is true for a lot of these other pocket passers. They were extremely good at moving within the pocket and resetting and avoiding pressure and being able to move subtly without having to do dramatic, Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick type of things to escape and make plays on the run. So, I think somebody like Cam Ward from Miami shows the athleticism, the ability to create outside of structure, and a lot of the high-end special traits, but you wouldn't say necessarily that his skill is consistency and that just simple pocket movement from within. And that's where I think it gets a lot more difficult, because that's a trait that I think that can exist in the college level, but becomes a lot more difficult to project to the next level. And I think you're going to get guys all over the place in terms of evaluation from this draft class, because a lot of these guys show the ability to do it sometimes, but not necessarily consistently. And it's about projecting guys like, Jackson Dart or Curtis Rourke and players like that, and trying to figure out if we can, if that is something that we can get consistently at the next level, and or if it's just something that happens inconsistently even at the college level.
Yeah, and that's the reason, quite frankly, that you don't have any of these guys that are surefire, locked in. Some of them, all of them have things they do really well, things they don't do so well, and a lot of inconsistencies, which is why you don't have anybody ranked as hey, you got to take him if you have one of the first 10 picks.
Yeah, it's not a vintage-looking draft class. It's not a class where you look and say there's 3, 4, 5 guys that we love in the first round. I don't think it's as bad as it was a couple of years ago when Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback in the first round, and there was debate as to where Kenny Pickett would have been drafted if the Steelers hadn't been desperate enough to take him, at pick number 20 or 21 or wherever it was they grabbed him. A lot of people were saying, look, Kenny Pickett is not any better than the rest of that draft class. And those guys all started to go in the third round. So I don't think it's as bad as that draft class, but neither is it as good as, a couple of the ones either side of that, where there were 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys getting drafted in the first round. And everybody was pretty comfortable with that. Last season or last year, there were 6 guys drafted in the first round, and all of them looked to have been pretty good. I mean, obviously J.J. McCarthy hurt his knee and we haven't seen as much of him, but everybody that's seen playing time as a rookie has at least been average, if not better. We're not looking at that kind of draft class.
All right, so this was in The Athletic today, written by Jason Lloyd on Deshaun Watson. And again, Jason Lloyd, a good reporter and no reason to question him, has really good sources. So Coach Kevin Stefanski had shown Deshaun Watson, a video of his offense during their first meeting March 22, 2022, demonstrating how Watson could thrive in a wide zone play action scheme crafted by Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, that Stefanski runs. After he arrived in Cleveland, Watson never embraced Stefanski's system. He wanted to be in shotgun. Stefanski wanted him to play under center, play action component, make that part of the offense more effective. Later in that same article, Browns players told Jason Lloyd there was a constant heaviness surrounding Watson in the locker room. They felt different energy in the building upon his departure after his Achilles injury in October. A couple of veterans said it felt like a cloud had been lifted. And basically it was an article that detailed kind of where you were with Watson, where you are now, how it all went wrong. And again, Jason Lloyd's been a reporter for a long time. He has really good sources. I don't question any of this. It's telling, though. I mean, if Deshaun Watson didn't want to play under center, why'd he come to Cleveland? Kevin Stefanski, and well, I guess there's 230 million reasons why that are guaranteed. So I'll answer my own question there. But it was a mess. This is the mess that the quarterback position became.
Yeah, and this is why, we talked about this during the season as well. It was always a bad fit from a schematic point of view, because the things that Watson was doing really well in Houston were not the things that Stefanski wanted to do in his offense. Now, there was the unknown element there was, well, could he do them very well? From a skill set, a physical tool standpoint, there was some projection that made sense within this offense, but that all goes out of the window at the point where Watson doesn't want to do that. If he's going to push back against what Stefanski wants to do, well, then you have this real problem, particularly when you've just traded for him, given up what they've given him the fully guaranteed contract. Yet you don't have leverage anymore. I mean, he has an unprecedented amount of leverage to say, I don't want to run that stuff. You need to come up with an offense that suits me. I don't have to do what you want in your offense. And I think that's where they got into real difficulty and got stuck. And, Stefanski had to kind of change his system, then had to try and bring in outside voices to try and, moderate his system and meet in the middle. And it was just a thing that was never going to work from that point of view, and was part of the reason why, we just never really saw Watson play at that level from beforehand. Whether or not he was capable of getting back there is another matter. But they were never able to just cut loose and say, this is the system that he should be running, because the starting point was the Stefanski offense, which is a very, very different system.
And relative to feeling like a cloud had been lifted, you probably saw that the first couple of games with Jameis Winston. There was an energy, there was an excitement until the turnovers caught up with everything.
Yeah, and, Jameis Winston is nothing if not a vibes guy. He brings some feel-good factor to everything. He's entertaining. Everybody loves him. You can absolutely understand why going from Deshaun Watson and how badly that was going to the optimism and the fun of Jameis would be like a cloud being lifted. The unfortunate sort of reality of Jameis Winston, though, is that he's a quarterback with a ceiling, and that volatile style of play, sometimes it's going to break your way and you're going to have incredible performances and you're going to topple really, really good teams. Other times, the negative side of it, of the variance, is going to catch up with you, and you're going to get the bad plays, and it's going to be the reason you lose games. And Jameis Winston is a quarterback unique in NFL history, where he threw 5,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns and got benched after it. That was the season where his team was still like, you know what? As good as that was, and as much positivity as you brought to the table, the negatives still outweighed it, and we've decided it's too much. You can't be starting for this team anymore. So, that's a hell of a statement that's kind of been backed up by teams since that as talented as he is and as many big plays as he's bringing to the table, it still doesn't outweigh the volume of negative plays that he brings to the table as well. And that's why there is a capped ceiling to what you can be if Jameis Winston is your quarterback.
So longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi, ESPN Cleveland, was asked kind of connecting the dots. Did you hire Tommy Rees as the new offensive coordinator because you have an interest in Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, who Rees coached?
I'm already on record that I wouldn't touch him, but if they do it, fine. He does have a lot of physical traits, okay? And I'm a physical trait guy. All right, I think you need physical traits to excel at the NFL level at any position. And he'll light it up at the combine. You know that.
Yep.
I don't think it's only coincidence that this move was made.
Okay.
I think someone in that building already has a liking is intrigued by Milroe, and it makes sense to make this move. And we'll see how far it goes. The question is, where would you take him?
So, Sam, just your thoughts on Milroe. Again, it's really early in the process, but he has started a couple years at Alabama, so you certainly have enough. You've seen him a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think you make an offense coordinator move at this point because of a quarterback that you might draft in the upcoming draft. It's a move where it might make you more likely to draft Milroe, but I don't think you're making this move because you've already identified Milroe as somebody that you like and that you might want to bring in. I don't think that's the cause and effect that we're dealing with here. Milroe's a spectacular athlete. I mean, his rushing ability is legit. His arm is spectacular. He's got big size, big strength, big athleticism, and mobility. He's just not a consistent passer. He's not a consistent quarterback at this point. So he's definitely an intriguing player that you might like in a draft that is not particularly stocked with quarterbacks. And particularly once you get past those top two guys, who I think most people are anticipating go in the first 5 picks, once you get beyond those two, there are going to be rankings all over the place. Somebody is going to get pushed up. Somebody is going to get drafted higher because there will still be teams that need quarterbacks. And, someone will gravitate towards a Milroe because of those physical traits that we talked about and hope that they can teach him to be a high-level quarterback at the next level. But he hasn't shown the ability to consistently develop that side of his game. He didn't get necessarily better at that during his college career. So I think it's still a massive projection and a risk to take him if you need him to start early.
Yeah, as I hear you describe him, it's kind of the same thing I heard about Lamar Jackson. And I don't want to say he's going to become Lamar Jackson because but those were the question marks that a lot of people had about Lamar Jackson coming out.
Yeah, I mean, they were. I don't think that they were as well founded with Lamar Jackson. I think he was a significantly better passing quarterback in college than Milroe is. The mechanics are better, the accuracy was better, the overall efficiency was better, and the way he played the game was better. He played from a pro style type of offense at Louisville, which he never really got credit for, and also didn't run as a sort of default instinct for a guy as athletic and as special as he was. He's always been more of a designed running quarterback than he has been a guy that leans on it as scrambling as a crutch, as a way of sort of making up for deficiency in the pass game. So it was definitely something that was thrown at Lamar Jackson in a similar way in some quarters, but I don't think it was nearly as valid with Lamar as it is with Milroe.
Sam Monson from 33rd Team, co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Are you ready? The Ohio Lottery is about to unleash 50 new millionaires on Ohio. Want a chance to become one? Play VIP Millions. With 50 $1 million winning tickets, it's your best chance to win $1 million ever.
We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson, 33rd Team, co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, hi. My name's Joseph. I'm calling from Buffalo, New York. Lived here all my life, lifelong Browns fan. I'm hoping and praying that the Browns trade down and with the picks that they receive, maybe move back up into the first round and take a quarterback later in the draft, and the one that I absolutely love. I've looked at enough film and also what the pundits are saying about him, Jackson Dart. There's so much to like about him, and I hope they do their due diligence with him. So that's it. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Sam, you had mentioned it. There's another name, Jackson Dart. He's a pretty young guy, too. He's played 4 years, but he's still like 21, 22. What have you seen from Dart?
Yeah, I think there's going to be certainly a fairly strong Jackson Dart hive in this draft. I think there's a lot of people that are going to like him. A lot of analytics people are going to like his data profile. There's some very encouraging numbers with him. And then I think tape people are going to like him as well. There's some physical tools there. So I don't know necessarily that he's going to sneak into the first round. And if you need to jump back into the first to make that happen, I think trading down is generally a reasonably sound approach to the draft. Like, throw as many darts as possible because you're just maximizing your chances of getting good players that way. The one caveat to that is, if you are drafting at the top of the draft and you have a chance to snag a genuine blue chip player, that is where the potential difference in draft picks does exist, is at the very top of the draft. So, I think Cleveland will have offers to trade down for teams that are quarterback needy and didn't get into those top two picks. But equally, you might have the chance to take the best player in the draft that is not a quarterback, and that could be difficult to turn down. But you might be able to get Jackson Dart in the second or the third round. And in that scenario, I think he's absolutely a quarterback that would be intriguing for a team like Cleveland, who could answer their starting position without the expenditure of that top draft pick, and is one of the ways where you can make a quarterback change or potentially get out from under this contract without it crippling the salary cap.
So this from 33rd Team, potential second-year breakout candidates. They go with J.J. McCarthy, quarterback from the Vikings, who missed the entire season with an injury. While the injury is a concern, fully healthy McCarthy should be an electric option as an NFL starter. Whether the Vikings or another team, McCarthy ability to sit and learn without being thrown into the fire means that he'll be able to play with a lot more confidence in 2025. I get all that, and I like him, and I thought when he was asked to throw at Michigan, he was pretty good. Why would you ask him to throw when you run the ball the way that Michigan did in his college career? So what are your thoughts just about McCarthy?
I mean, I think all of that is true. I think he has a chance to be a breakout player next year. And I think it would have been interesting had Sam Darnold continued his regular season play through week 18 into the wild card round and beyond. Unfortunately for them, Sam Darnold absolutely collapsed. And I think any idea that they might trade J.J. McCarthy completely went out the window with that collapse. And now, he's still the future. Maybe Darnold will remain as a bridge quarterback or as a sort of medium-term starter, but I don't think they could possibly trade away J.J. McCarthy based off that. But he has all the tools. He was seen generally in the middle of the pack in this quarterback class a year ago. Every other quarterback from that draft class has looked pretty good. Caleb Williams maybe was disappointing only relative to special expectations as the number one pick, but Jaden Daniels has been a superstar. Drake May has looked very good despite zero help around him. Michael Penix looked good late in the season when he came in and replaced Cousins. Bo Nix rivaled Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year for periods. And McCarthy was sort of fit in the middle of that for most people. He was, generally speaking, QB4 in that group and somewhere in the middle. And so if that's true, if that's where he is in the general mean of that average of what was a very good rookie class, then you would expect him to be able to come in next year, having learned from the sideline, having taken all those mental reps while rehabbing that knee, and hit the ground running and be a good starting caliber quarterback for the Vikings.
So when you look at the Browns, obviously they got to figure out quarterback. The names of the veterans, not great relative to free agency. We'll assume Kirk Cousins will be able to force his way into being a free agent because he has the no trade. When you look at the guys that are available, Wentz, Cousin, Fields, Wilson, Darnold, Daniel Jones, do any of them make a lot of sense for the Browns? And assuming they go back to the Kevin Stefanski under center, play action, that kind of offense, which it appears they're going to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously cost is a big factor there. I think Justin Fields is a really interesting reclamation project for teams generally, not necessarily specifically Cleveland, but that athleticism is legit. It's top tier. It buys you a lot of wiggle room in the pass game. He has gotten incrementally, albeit slow, small steps, better every single season of his career. And he has the arm to make all the throws. His biggest issue has been trusting his eyes and just putting the ball in the air and giving his receivers chance to make plays. And I think that gets simplified a little bit in systems like Stefanski's, where it's much more prescribed. Generally speaking, it's sort of dialed up and it's just verify, drop back, scan, verify, put the ball in the air. And I think if you can convince him to trust his eyes and put the ball in the air a little bit more, there's a jump to be had by Justin Fields, not just another small step forward, but you can actually have a significant leap forward in his ability. So I think there'll be teams that look at him and think we can still get a decent player out of him. I think Daniel Jones is potentially also an interesting reclamation project as well. A guy, again, who has pretty good athleticism, a good arm, has shown reasonable play in his past. And then again, kind of lost confidence, lost his ability to put the ball in the air, and the big plays dried up. But again, if Stefanski thinks he can rebuild that, we've already seen there's a capable starter within Daniel Jones and somebody that could be a good short or medium term option until the salary cap situation gets easier for them to manage.
Sam Monson from the 33rd team, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson from the 33rd team. He is the co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. This one's from PFF. One 2025 draft prospect for all 32 teams. So the Browns They identify the needs as quarterback, offensive tackle, running back, cornerback. Day 1 or 2 option, they go with Travis Hunter. If the Browns don't opt to draft quarterback, number 2 overall selection, they could be a prime spot for Hunter, Heisman Trophy winner. PFF receiving and coverage grades above 90, or 89 rather, in 2024. Allowed just 22 receptions in 428 snaps in coverage. Sam, Hunter's an intriguing guy. What do you think of him at 2 overall?
Yeah, I mean, I love Hunter as the answer to that question for any team because every single team in the NFL needs either a cornerback or a wide receiver, and Hunter's really good at both of them. I think he's good enough to go at that kind of spot, number 2 overall. Whether or not you want to isolate him to either one of those positions, I think earlier in his career, he was better as a cornerback than he was as a wide receiver. I think his feel for zone in particular, his ability to sort of occupy space, but then really break on the ball with incredible speed is special. And I think this season we saw him be a better wide receiver than he was a corner, really show his dynamism after the catch, his quickness, his ability to play the ball in space. I think he's dynamic at either position. And, either one would potentially justify a top 5 draft selection. And there's always the specter that you could have him do both still, do what the Colorado Buffaloes did and say, this kid is special enough to play both ways in a way that just doesn't happen in today's NFL, but also today's college game. Be a genuine 2-way player. I think that's more likely if you draft him as a cornerback and then, keep a package of plays for him on offense. We've seen that, in little bits and pieces in the NFL over the last sort of couple of decades. It's also possible, though, that a team would look at him and say, he's a wide receiver for us who could be a sub-package player on defense. Like maybe we keep him as our dime cornerback and don't have to spend that extra roster spot on a 4th, 5th corner to come in and play. So I think he's a special player. I think, the Heisman Trophy conversation where it got kind of reduced to just snaps sort of misses the point of just how special it is for a guy to be playing genuine both ways in an era where that hasn't really happened since like the 1950s. He's a genuinely special player, and I don't know that that's going to be different in the NFL.
So when you look at the Browns and you look at the roster, are they, let's assume, and it's a big assumption, let's assume they get competent quarterback play next year. How good can they be?
I mean, I think they can still be very good. The roster this year wasn't maybe quite as good as it looked on paper heading into the season, but that's due to injuries, and that's a variable that just goes across the NFL every single season, and you're never really sure who's going to be hit the worst and who isn't. The Browns' offensive line got banged up. Obviously, Nick Chubb coming back off his injury wasn't quite the same guy, and then he's had another injury since. So there were areas where that Browns roster was a little bit weaker than maybe it should have been on paper heading into the season. But you look at what they have returning, you look at generally the quality across the team, and you say this is a playoff caliber football team if the quarterback is able to play at that level. I think that remains true heading into 2025.
So the other thing that is kind of interesting, let's look at the draft capital list from the 33rd team via Tankathon. Browns have the most draft capital. You see the picks, 233, 67, 93, 103, 167, 178, 191, and then 3 of them above 200, ahead of the Jaguars, Raiders, Titans, and Patriots. Those are the top 5. When I look at that, and a lot of people are talking, you trade down from 2 and you pick up, I'm kind of the mindset, take Hunter or Abdul Carter, whoever you think can make a huge impact at 2, and you can move back into the first round to get a guy that would be a quarterback early in the second round, and then you get the 5th-year option bonus if he's a quarterback that you really like. Does that make sense as kind of a strategy? Because if you get a quarterback that you think can play, you want that 5th-year option on his rookie deal.
You do. It's definitely a potential positive. I think the number of times though where it's actually been tremendously useful has been smaller than people sort of expected it to be, or maybe, think of it when it comes to those draft moves, and you're like, do we just take the guy in the second round, or do we trade back into the first to get that fifth year option? I think generally speaking, teams have made the decision before it becomes a factor. You're either extending him, to a Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert type of deal, the new $55 million plus a year, you're giving him the big second money contract, or you're already moving on. You've already decided he's not the guy and you're going in a different direction, and the fifth year option probably doesn't do you an awful lot of good. I think that the number of times where it takes teams 4 years to figure out whether they've got a guy or not is just smaller than you think it is. So I think you're right. It's entirely possible or an arguable position to just take the best player at number 2 overall. Don't try and get too cute. Don't try and maximize draft picks. Let's just pick your favorite player in the draft, whether it's Travis Hunter, whether it's Abdul Carter, whoever. Grab that guy at 2. But I think you could use your first pick in the second round on the quarterback. I suspect that's when the next wave of quarterbacks is probably going to come off the board. Maybe one will sneak into the first, but I think the chances are guys will be there in the second round. If you want to grab a quarterback, you can probably grab one at the top of the second, and you'll know pretty early whether or not he's going to be your guy to the point where you want to give him that second contract.
Before I let you go, how do you determine quarterback at 2 or, Hunter or Abdul Carter? What's the delineation mark between we're taking this guy, even though he might not be the second best player on our board, we're taking the quarterback there?
I think it really is entirely down to their evaluation on these quarterbacks. I mean, if they think that either one of Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and I would assume those are the 2 guys, that's consensus where it is right now. Maybe a Drew Aller enters the draft after all, even though he said he was going back to Penn State. Things could change. But I think generally that's the 1-2. If they believe in either one of those guys, if they think that they have special within the likely range of outcomes, if they believe that one of those guys is the next Drake May or even Bo Nix or, Jaden Daniels, whoever, then you take him. It doesn't matter that you also think that Travis Hunter is a superstar, Abdul Carter is. Quarterback's more important. And yeah, it would be a reasonable contract to be giving a quarterback right out of the gate when you have this Deshaun Watson deal still on the books, but it would also give you a way out, and it's way more important than anything else you could do. If you think that they're marginal and maybe there's an outside shot that one of them becomes a guy down the line, but realistically you don't have faith in them, they're in the sort of Kenny Pickett category or the Will Levis category where they're, fringe second round guys that maybe could work out, but they're going to go high because that's where the quarterbacks are in this draft. Then I think you take the guy you think is the superstar and you come back next year and try and do the quarterback thing all over again. It just comes down to whether they have genuine belief in either of those quarterbacks.
Sam Monson, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Sam Monson, make sure you check him out. 33rd Team. He is also co-host of the Check the Mic podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.